All right, so starting with Senate Bill 134, I call Senator Birdsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. For the record, my name is Regina Birdsell. I'm the state senator for District 19, which encompasses the towns of Derry, Hampstead, and Windham. And I am the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 134, and I apologize for it being so long in coming, but we had a lot of work to do on it. This started out in 2022. It was presented to me from one of my PTSD commission members had asked me to look into it. So I went ahead and I put in 134. And you'll be hearing from the two officers that it's basically going to be impacting, but it designs a new retirement. And I worked very closely with Marty Carlin. And this is a new provision for retirements, a new provision for violent accidental disability, and or death retirement benefits. It contained ambiguous provisions and inconsistencies with current law, which could have hindered proper implementation of the bill, which is why I went ahead. It was presented in January, and amendment was presented in January, and I took a look at it. I didn't think it did what we wanted to do. So Marty Carlin, myself, and speak of the devil, Marty Carlin, myself worked on this throughout. So meetings with members of the New Hampshire retirement system produced significant changes to Senate Bill 134, including strengthening the definition of purposeful, hostile, and violent act, removing the COLA benefit, keeping the survivor benefit the same as existing Group 2 benefits, and revising the medical subsidy and requiring medical reexamination. This went through the Senate Finance Committee, I believe, last week, and we brought it to the floor last Thursday, and that is why you have it right here. And I can have my admin send you a listing. I have Marty was really good about putting together, I'd asked him to put together a comparison sheet, one with the current Group 2 job related, what 134 initially wanted, and then what we finally came up with. So I can have my admin send it to the chair and she can get it out to you.
We definitely want the comparison of what 134 as it currently exists versus the basic retirement benefits.
Yep.
We're not really too worried about what you fixed in the Senate because we don't need to worry about it if you took care of it.
There might be some tweaks that we might have to make with it, but other than that, I think we can do that pretty quickly.
Okay.
You're on no time constraint, I know.
Yes, thank you. Are there any questions, Representative Lekis and Representative Schmidt?
Thank you. This is concerning the fiscal note. I'm wondering if the dollar amounts reflect the final bill that came out of the Senate. I noticed there are things in here which don't, like the methodology still lists the COLA.
Correct. That is actually why I started working on it, because it was such a high price tag. So that's why I worked with it. We don't have a current fiscal note on it.
You got it. Okay. Representative Schmidt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good afternoon, Senator. Is this bill brought at the request of any particular group?
It was brought as a request from the two police officers that were affected, and anyone in the future that's affected by a violent act with a deadly weapon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The questions? All right. Thank you very much, Senator.
Yes.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Carlin on definition of what this is actually doing. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While those are making their way around, I'll introduce myself. Marty Carlin, representing the New Hampshire Retirement System. NHRS doesn't have a position on this bill either way. It's a policy decision for the legislature. Does everybody have a handout now? As Senator Birdsell stated when she introduced the bill, this was a bill from last year that was retained in the Senate, retained in committee, and amended on the opening day of the session. We still had several technical and mechanical concerns with that bill as amended, and I reached out to Senator Birdsell, and we've had several conversations over the months about trying to get something that met the intention of the bill, and it was also able for NHRS to administer it effectively. So the handout that I gave you is a side-by-side of the current Group 2 job-related disability benefit, which is referred to as accidental disability in the statute. The Senate Bill 134 doesn't replace that. Rather, it creates a third level of disability for Group 2 only, the violent attack, violent accidental disability.
Do you mean that someone who qualifies under this new benefit is also eligible to the regular disability benefit?
Not both. It would be an either or. It's like there's a lot of people who are injured on the job, but their injury was accidental or not a violent intent or things like that, where they would still qualify under this. This carves out what the expectation is a very small niche of people, who were shot chasing someone, things like that, or just violent attacks that prevent them from going forward, as opposed to a car crash, where there was no intent, it was an accident, but they still are unable to work. That the existing disability benefit would remain, so there'd be three levels of disability. And for job-related disability in Group 1 and Group 2, basically this can happen to, as long as it's a work-related injury, you can qualify for this at any point in your career. Somebody early on in their career could be injured, or a veteran many years in. The current disability benefit has there's a definition: accident, repeated trauma, gradual degradation while on the job, or job-related occupational disease. Typically, we look to the Department of Labor for determination on the work-relatedness piece for that. And if the qualifications are met and the independent medical examiner finds that the disability is likely to be permanent and would prevent them from doing that job going forward, they're granted a benefit. The new bill has a more strict and limited definition. Someone who has been totally and permanently incapacitated for duty as the result of a purposeful, hostile, and violent attack upon such member in the line of duty. In this section, the definition of purposeful, hostile, and violent attack means a physical attack with a deadly weapon, as defined in RSA 625.11.5, done with conscious intent and with such force that it results in the infliction of serious bodily injury, as defined in RSA 625.11.6. That's a criminal statute defining assault with a deadly weapon. So that's where the reference was there. That was in the original amended version of the bill, but that left sort of a gap. Is NHRS, its board, its staff aren't qualified investigators, to look at a situation like that and make a determination whether the definition was met. So Senator Birdsell reached out. We had originally thought maybe the AG's office would be the appropriate body. They didn't feel it was in their wheelhouse, and the Commissioner of Safety, however, was open for being the person who would review the record and make that certification to the board so they could move forward with this benefit. The commissioner and the staff over at Safety already do this for that $100,000 line of duty death benefit. That's not in our statute, but as well as for issues with troopers injured on the job and whether they have to use their sick time or not, depending on the nature. So there's a sort of a structure and a process and actually a statute governing how that is done over there. So the attorney from safety provided that language to us, which we provided to Senator Birdsell. So we have a clearer definition than we did. We have a qualified body making that determination. So we feel it's administrable at this point. So what happens if someone qualifies for this and they meet the medical criteria as well? The benefit is going to be a little different than the current accidental disability benefit for Group 2, which is 66 2/3 of their average final compensation, whether that's a high 3 or a high 5. And there's also, because it's a set amount, if the person who is injured has more years of service so that their service retirement would have a larger percentage of their AFC, there's a supplemental benefit to make them whole for anything above 66 2/3. That 66 2/3 is a tax-free benefit because it's a job-related disability. The supplemental is not. So that's the current law. The change in this Senate Bill 134, it's 100% of the member's annual rate of earnable compensation. So whatever their salary was in the last 12 months would be the benefit amount, or $75,000, whichever is greater. So it creates a floor benefit for the, for this particular benefit. So that's the benefit structure. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to take questions on that, or?
Let's see if there are questions. Representative Schuett has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Carlin. Good afternoon. I assume that you have numbers of the amount of people who are currently receiving benefits under the accidental portion. Can you share with us how many that would be? And do you have any kind of an estimate how many of those might apply under the other?
There is approximately between 400 and 450 accidental Group 2 disability recipients currently. Without looking back into the files and looking at the narrative of their cases, it's hard to say how many would have qualified. This bill does, in Section 2, contain session law, though, that it's a look back for anyone who retired under Group 2 accidental disability on or after 7/1/18 can come back and apply for this. They still go through the certification process. That's not a magic date. There may be some people who may have been injured before that or not. There's a few. Actually, I had spoken to a couple of folks who are retired under these circumstances. Googling, I thought of a couple of other high-profile things that were stuck in my mind, and so there's probably there's at least 2 and more than X. But the look back right now in the bill is till 7/1/18, so that's a retroactive application. It wouldn't be, the benefit wouldn't be retroactive to the date. It would be start with the grant of the new level of disability.
Other questions? Representative Schmidt? No, Representative Lekis.
Thank you. So for the new benefit, it says that it would be 100% or 75,000, but it says it would be tax-free. Can it be if it's 100% under the federal?
Yeah, I think there's a dollar limit or something with taxability of disability benefits, but my understanding from our lawyers is that it would all be a tax-free benefit.
Okay, thank you. And follow up?
Follow up.
I know in the original, or the fiscal note we have has a fairly substantial cost. I don't know to what extent the change in the bill modified that, but is there some idea of what the change in the fiscal note would be?
Yeah, it's going to be significantly less than that number. I looked at, when I printed out the bill this morning, I looked at the fiscal note, and because of the way the amendment was drafted, it was fairly open-ended. So the actuary assumed essentially that half the population who retire on disability would get this benefit, and that, with this definition, that's a much more narrower group than 50%. You know, I couldn't put a percentage on it, but I mean, this is, you know, these events happen, you know, not often. You know, these limited attack events. So that fiscal note, you know, is irrelevant to the current bill that the Senate amended and sent over.
One more follow-up?
One more follow-up.
Okay, I didn't see anything in here funding this, so am I correct in assuming this is going to increase the unfunded liability?
It again, if you know, the stated intent over in the Senate and the definition, we believe it's going to be a very limited number of people who would receive this benefit. To the extent that those folks are getting more under this benefit than they are under the current accidental disability benefit, that would obviously increase costs, you know, for funding the plan. Depending on the number of people who qualify, it may or may not show up in the rates. You know, it may be in the rounding, and you know, there's a cost, but it's de minimis enough where it wouldn't be obvious. We don't, you know, you know, and that would kind of show up over time with experience, as you know, that this has been on the books for a few years. We see how many people are getting it, and the actuary will have some data to make a projection going forward for future rates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There would be no
Representative Simon?
unfunded piece. It would just be a normal cost increase, I believe, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just looking on the second to last page of the fiscal note there, where it said the New Hampshire Retirement System actuary projects an increase to the actual accrued liability of 87.6 million. You're saying that would be if 50% of the people were receiving the benefit?
Yeah, and
I know that it's not going to be that much
yeah.
in this, but that's what
Yeah.
it was based off of.
yes, and I think the version you never saw, the previously amended version, I think it was a look back to everyone who was retired as well. So that's where the unfunded piece would have come in on that. You know, honestly, it had enough drafting issues where it was really hard for them to value. So they went very conservative on it because of the ambiguities in the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? I have one. Still looking at the fiscal note, there's a whole lot of issues with the language and the interpretation. Have those been resolved?
Yes, the version you have in front of you, we've reviewed, as has folks in the risk management unit, admin services, and safety, and nobody had any obvious concerns with the amended version that the Senate passed last week.
Okay.
So if you flip the page, there's a couple of other boxes on the back. The eligibility and the benefit levels are larger. There's also gainful occupation, which is the top row on the second page. That's a provision in the law right now where if someone is receiving a disability, group 1 or group 2, job related or non-job related, there are limits on how much income they can earn in retirement without offsetting their disability benefit. You know, so there's a formula involved in that. For current group 2 accidental disability, once the person turns 45 and would have had 20 years of service, there's no more gainful occupation. For this new level, there would be no gainful occupation at all. So the person could get the violent accidental disability benefit, and if they were able to work in another capacity and you know, be compensated for that, it wouldn't offset their disability benefit from NHRS.
Isn't that an issue with the taxability of it?
Well, their income from other employment would be taxable, and I will bring that back to our legal folks, because that didn't come up in our internal discussions, and one of them is a former tax attorney, so, and it's always but that, I still want to double check it for you.
Okay.
And then the last piece is medical subsidy. I'm not sure, some of you who have been around a few years may be familiar with that term. This is a benefit that the legislature created in the late 80s and early 90s for the different groups and have been phasing it out over time. This is a payment if a retiree is receiving insurance through their former employer, NHRS will pay a set amount in statute to offset any out-of-pocket premiums they're paying to the former employer, whether it's a political subdivision or a school or the state. The plan is closed to Group 1 members now. Group 2 members who were in service on June 30th of 2000, and they're still working, they'll be subsidy eligible when they retire, as will Group 2 regular current accidental disability retirements who were active before July 1 of 2005. So this, and that's a ever shrinking pool, as we get farther away from those dates. This bill would create a subsidy for this category of disability, with a larger monthly premium offset amount, $1,000 per person prior to Medicare eligibility and $630 and change after. That percentage is the same as the percentage in the current subsidy amounts for those who are receiving it, but it's just a larger base number. And again, if their insurance premiums that they were paying from their former employer were less than that, they wouldn't get the extra. We would pay up to the amount, and if the amount was greater, they'd pay the difference. So that's how the subsidy works. So those were the version that came over from the Senate. Those are the four primary differences in the current benefit and in this new benefit. So I'd be glad to answer any other questions.
This continues to say it doesn't affect the sections dealing with working after retirement, so that someone who were to be retired due to this disability would still be limited to part-time work if they were working for a retirement system employer.
Yes, that may be inartfully worded. There were changes in the previous version about working after retirement and post-retirement death benefits. Those were taken out in the version you received. So it's status quo for the working after retirement rules, for the 50% auto spousal benefit for Group 2, things like that. Those are unchanged for this new category.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions? Representative Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. Early on, you mentioned both Group 1 and Group 2, but this is definitely only Group 2, correct?
Yeah, this is Group 2 only.
Okay. And this may not be completely irrelevant, but there
Follow
are people that work in Group 1 that are also exposed to this type of potential injury. Inspectors of various nature, sometimes you have to take law enforcement along, so it would seem like it might apply to Group 1 as well. That's not really relevant, I suppose. Thank you.
It depends on whether we're expecting somebody to come over to the DMV with a pistol and settle their disputes violently. I wouldn't think it's that likely.
Maybe I would follow up if I may.
Please.
Yep. I am a Group 1 retiree, worked at DES, and there's a number of instances where our inspectors, especially when you're tracking down people doing illegal disposal on their property and that type of thing, where you do take a law enforcement officer with you, or sometimes not, and there have been cases of threatening with firearms and that type of thing. So, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that.
Yes, all right. Well, I'm sure that if this benefit is a success, Group 1 will be coming after us in the future. Any other questions for Mr. Carlin? Representative Broden.
I apologize for coming in late. So in the current statute, it says that the people who are disabled who have additional compensation from a part-time position or something, that is taken into account by the in their payment, but in their annual amount earned. Whereas if House Bill 134 passes, any type of gainful occupation reporting would not be required.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kenneth Chamberlain? Thank you. But you have to turn your mic on, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, please.
My name is Kenneth Chamberlain. I'm retired Manchester police officer, retired in 2019. I was an investigator in the traffic unit. I served 27 and a half years. My first 11 years, I worked in Hooksett. I was a patrol sergeant. I was also held a position of union president with the Manchester Police Department. I held that position until my retirement in 2019. I'm also past president of the New Hampshire Police Association. I was president in 2016, 2017. I still currently assist the New Hampshire Police Association with lobbying and also with charitable fundraising. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 134. So the purpose of this bill is to add a new section under accidental disability and the accidental disability retirement, violent accident disability retirement allowance. So I have my prepared statement. I'm going to wander off this thing now, just listening to some of the stuff that's been spoken to here. So the reason why I got involved, obviously I'm close friends with Dan Doherty through my work with him, through being his union president, and also just from the stuff that I've done with the New Hampshire Police Association. And over the course of time since 2012, just some of the things that Dan's been dealing with, things that have come up, I just felt that some type of legislation was needed to try to correct some of these things. One of the things, if you look at, there's two type of disability retirements in the state. One is accidental disability, which is something that happens when you're working, you get injured, and you're permanently disabled. The other one's called ordinary. So one of the conversations I had with Dan, probably well into this, his journey now and his disability, when I found out that his disability was called accidental disability, my question to him was, accidental disability, well, this wasn't an accident. How's it called accidental disability when it's not an accident? So the one thing is with this whole bill is dealing with is everything that would be covered under here with these disabilities. They're not an accident. They're all intentional acts. And just listening to some of the conversation, I feel for any employee, someone that's going on, a gas worker, utility person, that goes out to a home someplace and gets harassed or maybe even gets attacked, I feel for that person. In this scenario, in these incidents that you're going to hear, they're going to speak to you and they're going to explain the scenarios that they were in, the incidents that they were in. They were purposely attacked. They were targeted and attacked. So it wasn't like they just came upon something and something just, someone didn't like the fact that their meter was being read. They were attacked with the specific intent of causing harm or killing them. And the injuries that they sustained are no different than if they were in combat. They're not clean injuries. The type of injuries that are ever developing, they're ever evolving, they're ever changing. They're not an injury that you have and it heals. You might have a disability from it, but say you lost a limb, the limb's gone, and you have to figure out how to compensate for not having that limb. The injuries that they have are, I'll use Dan as an example. He'll probably come up and tell you some of the stuff that he has wrong with him, but some of his injuries, he was shot 6 times. He fell on his left tibia was shattered, so it caused him to fall on his back. One of the bullets that was shot at him went under his vest after he fell down, so it just bounced around inside him because it wouldn't come out. It caused just a ton of internal injuries to his internal organs, intestines. He lost 2 feet of his intestines. He has lead fragments in his body that they can't take out. And the reason they can't take them out is too risky. So just think about, you buy a house, right now and it's built before 1978, you have to have a lead paint test done on it. Why is that? Because you want to make sure you're not going to get poisoned, something like that from the house. He has lead in his body. And what is that going to do? We don't know what causes that's going to have with him going in the future, but I'm sure something's going to happen with that. He's had 19 major surgeries. So I'm just giving you an example like this. In Paul Lewis, same thing. He was shot in the arm. Again, it's not a clean injury. He's still having issues with that, and they're ever developing injuries. So that's part of the reason why this bill is important. So I'm all kind of all over the place because I'm just trying to answer some of the stuff that you talked about. One of the things with these two offices is the time that they had on when this took place. So Dan had 3 years and 9 months on when his incident took place. So when we started our journey with this bill, we actually started back in 2019 is when we started trying to put this together. Our conversation started way before that to get me motivated to actually start putting this bill together. That's, kind of looking at the time frame. So when we were putting this together and I'm looking at what his pension was, what they came out with this pension. The way the pension works, it's the average for disability. It's the average of your 5 highest years. So we'll take Dan's example right now. He had 3 years and 9 months on when his incident took place. So to start off with, your first years are generally your lowest years. So Dan actually, he tried coming back to work. He did. He came back for 7 years, put 7 more years in. During those 7 years, like I said, he had like 19 from the beginning of his incident to when he finished work, and he had about 19 major surgeries. During those surgeries, he's out of work. So when he's out of work, it's workers' comp. The way workers' comp works, if you get hurt, injured, and you're going to be out of work, it starts off as sick time. So you usually have about 3 days of sick time. It gives the administration some time to get your paperwork together to convert the sick time to workers' comp time, and then that sick time eventually converts to workers' comp time. So one of Dan's goals was he wanted to make 10 years. So psychologically, however you want to look at it, he had a goal to make 10 years. So he thought he had over 10 years. And I think it was 10 years and 7 months, 10 years and 9 months. He went up to retirement, and that's what he thought his number was. When they ran his number, they told him he had just over 9 years. So he told him you need to go back and recalculate that because that's not what it is. So they told him that the time that you're out on workers' comp is not considered credible service time. So now, think about that for a minute. The night he gets shot, that's a work day. He's clearly working, so it's going to count as a work day. He's fighting for his life that night. Next day, he's still fighting for his life. The doctors don't know how he lived. The amount of blood that he lost, it was incredible that his organs didn't shut down. So the next day, he's clearly still fighting for his life. That's a sick day. That sick day turned into a workers' comp day, which then turns into a non-credible service day. So he's being told that those days that he's fighting for his life are not considered credible service time. So psychologically, how do you take that? These are all things that fall into play with this type of incident and injuries and disability that these two officers are dealing with, and anyone else that falls behind them. So when they start calculating his time, even though he had, like I said, over 10 years in the system, when they started calculating his time, they could only come up with 4.5 years of actual time because of the amount of time that he missed on his surgeries. So they had to make up a half a year. I don't know how you factor that half a year to get your number to do your multiplier, but I know 3.5 of those years were his lowest, historically would be his lowest time. Now you add in the rest to make up your 5 years. What's the pension going to be? And now, at that time, he wasn't married. He was young. He's still obviously younger than me. He's still young. But he's looking at a future where, clearly he has a lot of medical stuff. If you look at him, he might look like there's nothing wrong with him. Internally, there's a lot wrong with him. Just over a year ago, he had a surgery where he had a blockage in his intestines. He'll tell you the stuff, but he had a blockage in his intestines. If you don't have an issue with your intestines, normally the doctor's going to go in there and they're going to do some surgery. They're going to unblock it. There was a very high risk of him going septic. Obviously, you don't want to have that. You'll die from that. In his situation, because of the scar tissue and with the amount of intestines that he had lost, any surgery that he has on his intestines, there's a risk that they won't have enough to reattach it, and now he'll have a colostomy bag. Eventually, at some point, that's probably going to happen with him, but they want to try to push that off as far as they can. So again, these are just some of the things that they're dealing with. So when they factor out his, obviously his pension, he's got this 5-year pension, and again, it's historically it's the lowest time. I had said to Dan when we were going through this stuff, can you imagine if someone had less time on than you? I mean, your situation's bad enough, but I can't imagine someone had less time on than you. And then Paul Lewis comes along, 8 months on the job. 8 months on the job when his incident happened. How do you factor 5-year average when you only worked 8 months, not 8 years, 8 months on the job, 8 months? How do you come up with a pension that he's going to be able to survive on, basically for the rest of his life? So that's why this pension was put together. As far as like the gainful occupation, so at one point that gainful occupation wasn't in play with this. It happened in 2012. I understand probably a reason for it. You could have someone slip and fall. These incidents are not a slip and fall. They didn't ask for it. They had no involvement in all of the injuries that they had. Potentially someone with a slip and fall. I mean, are they hurt? Could someone claim that they had an injury and now they're going out working another job and they're double dipping? So that was I'm assuming put in play because they want to avoid that potentially from happening. This here is not something they asked for. If they had their way right now, they'd be back out in the street working as a police officer. And you look at our society right now, it's very hard to find police officers. It's very hard to find them. They actually want to go out and work. Dan actually tried going back a little over a year ago. He actually passed a PT test, which was pretty heroic of him doing that. He paid for it though, because he couldn't walk for 2 weeks. But it's just impossible for them to do that. They had careers taken away from them. Their lives were put on hold. Financially, like I said, they have these ever-developing injuries. Some of the stuff that they'll put claims in for, like I said, Dan had that, he had a titanium rod put in his left leg. One of the surgeries he had, the bone was growing too much over the titanium rod. They had to remove it because it was causing stress between his knee and his ankle. They had to use a violent tool to pull that out. He also, his iliac artery was ruptured. They had to remove that. So he doesn't have an iliac artery in his left leg. That's used for blood circulation. So he has a rod taken out, covered under workers' comp. I think it was about a week later, he had to go back in for a procedure to check to make sure of the circulation because high risk for blood clotting because he doesn't have that artery. That surgery wasn't covered initially because they said it wasn't related to the initial incident. How's it not related to the initial incident when he doesn't have the artery? Now he has to go fight that. And this is a constant thing that was happening with him. So that's just an example, but the reason why this bill is important, again, is because of these things that they're dealing with. The injuries are not the same. The gainful occupation, it's not so much that they want to be able to go out and work a 40-hour-a-week job. They want to feel like a whole person. Their life was taken away from them. They want to feel like they have psychologically that they have a purpose. They have families, and they want to be able to say that, they can be productive or they're not being held back. They're getting their life back. Now, whether they can actually work a 40-hour-a-week job or not, That's irrelevant. The fact that someone's not telling them that they can't do that. So that it's a psychological part. It's not because they want to go out and say, I want to get rid of the gainful occupation because I want to be able to go work another job so I can make a lot of money. That's not really the reason for it. In this case, it's a psychological reason why they want to have it. And again, it's not, the injuries aren't anything that they had any part in. Someone else did this to them. It should not apply to them. So, like I said, I handed out my prepared statement. I could go back through the thing. I skipped over some stuff. You're more than welcome to read it. I'll take questions if you want it, but I just ask for your support in this bill.
Thank you. Representative Schuett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've had the honor to meet Officer Doherty and was well aware of his literally miraculous survival and attempts to return to work. So thank you for the update on how he's faring now. I'm curious, with the look back in this bill to 2018, would both of these officers be included in that?
That was the reason for that. And as far as, I don't know, the number of people that would be qualified under this, they're the only two that we're aware of.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, thank you.
Okay. I suppose we should hear from Don Doherty, please.
I apologize. I only made 10 copies. I don't know why I did that.
We'll share.
I apologize. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you folks. I had a script that I'm certainly going to deviate from. So back in 2012, as a Manchester police officer, I was shot 6 times assisting other officers who observed a violent career criminal involved in an altercation remove himself from a vehicle with what appeared to be a gun under his shirt and his waistband. I was on a swap that day. I wasn't supposed to be working. I was actually going on vacation, trying to work some days off, and I certainly wasn't supposed to be on the west side of Manchester. I was close by to the Grand Street Bridge. I jumped over and I helped locate the individual. Upon doing that, he fled on foot, threw one firearm, and a foot pursuit ensued. Eventually, I was able to catch up to him, and once I closed the gap, he removed the second firearm from his waistband and shot 15 rounds at me, 6 of which struck me in my leg, groin, face, hand, and abdomen. And luckily, I was behind the greatest hospital in the world, at least in my opinion, because they saved my life, the Catholic Medical Center. And I am here today because of the folks there. I went through 18 units of blood. The body holds approximately 9. And somehow, some way, I survived. And the details can go on forever about the story, but I'm not necessarily here to bore you with those details. I'm here to explain to you the cause in which I firmly believe in. In 2019, at the end of 2018, after 19 surgeries, I had to retire. I didn't want to, but I kept having surgery after surgery after surgery after surgery to help continue being a police officer, to make sure that I'm physically able to. And it came to a point where I was no longer able to do that. And it was very hard, but I had to, and I retired. And it was at that point where I took Ken Chamberlain off to the side and I said, we need to fix the retirement system for people in my position. We need to create a benefit that's focused more towards a violent attack rather than an accident. And I can assure you that there was nothing accidental about the person who tried to kill me. And when I was laying in my hospital bed, I was very fortunate at the time that I wasn't married. I didn't have children, but I can only imagine how much more of a burden that recovery would be had I been married, had children, because laying in that bed wondering how I'm gonna, if I wasn't able to return to work, how was I gonna be able to provide? How was I gonna have health insurance? What was I gonna do? And this bill here specifically touches upon, I think, what is three of the most important, fault is a bad word, but things that should be changed for people in my position, and that's your yearly benefit, the healthcare, and the gainful occupation. So the $75,000 a year that would increase, for me specifically, my benefit each year is $46,000. So if this piece of legislation were to go through, it would go from $46,000 to $75,000. And with that being said, is someone I know recently, he hurt his back on the job and he went out on accidental disability, the same accidental disability that I receive. His pension is nearly triple mine. And that is another reason why I feel that basing it off of a high 5-year average, where most young cops don't have that, because most young cops are the ones out in the street responding to the most dangerous of situations, because as you go on in your career, you're usually off the street. And then the healthcare subsidy, I felt that was important, and in fact, originally that wasn't even a thought of mine to even include this, but some senators suggested that we do that, and here it is, it's in there, and I thank them for that. And then the gainful occupation, that doesn't cost the state a dime. You know, I'm capped as to how much money I can make a year. I would like to wake up every morning, get in a routine, go to a job, go to a Christmas party, socialize, earn benefits, and I feel that the gainful occupation really limits that. And every year that cap changes based on the consumer sound index, if I'm saying that correctly. And, you know, I sell boats, I broker boats, and I say that because last year I didn't make a dime doing it because the economy's so bad and interest rates, that had it been a great year and I met my cap this year, or I went over my cap this year, I'd be penalized, where we're probably going to have another bad year. So the gainful occupation, I understand its purpose, but in this situation, we feel necessary to remove it, just to be a productive member of society, because I would like to work a full-time job. You know, at the end of the day, with the restrictions, with the legislation regarding the New Hampshire retirement system, I almost feel like I'm being punished for surviving. There's a whole slew of benefits that are in place through legislation for the family of the fallen officers, or firemen for Group 2. And that restriction, I unfortunately feel like it's a punishment. And just because I had just under 4 years on the job, had I been on longer, I would have received a higher monetary benefit. And at 45 years old, this restriction goes away. I'm not sure what the difference between 25 years old that I was when the shooting happened and 45 years old. That cap, to me, just doesn't make sense. If there's a cap, there's a cap. If there's not, there's not. I don't necessarily understand the 45 years old. You know, the 6 years that I returned as a police officer, it was interrupted by a surgery. I'd be out for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, at times 8 months. So I was never able to get a full, complete year after the shooting. Therefore, my pension benefit is limited. And to be told at a meeting with the New Hampshire Time System. When I went there, knowing I had 10 and a half years of service, they told me I had eight years, like 8.2 years. And I politely asked, what about the other 2.5 years? And they said, well, you didn't get credit for all the time. Well, they said more than likely you weren't getting credit for all the times that you were out injured, the initial year and then all the follow-up surgeries. And I found that to be pretty upsetting, considering that the hardest I've ever worked was following the shooting and recovering. I was fighting for my life, but not getting credit. And all the battles with workers' comp. That in itself was a post-traumatic stress diagnosis, dealing with that. I had bills that were in collection agencies. I was in monetary distress because of some of these bills that weren't being covered, specifically soft tissue that has to do with your organs. My legs, my bones, no question. But when it came to organs, sorry, that's not covered. So that in itself was just a battle, and that's a whole different slew of legislation that needs to be fixed. But I don't know if I can take that on as well. But I want to thank you for your time and listening to me. Any questions that you might have, feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. I'm very glad you survived that ordeal as well as you did.
Thank you.
And we will have to look into why time out on workers' comp, it doesn't apply to your pension, because that seems like a systemic problem, not just with people who are permanently disabled, but people who are out for a shorter period of time. But anyway, are there any questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul Lewis?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Lewis. I'm one of the two officers that we know will be directly benefiting from the bill. And I would like to say it's never easy sharing the story. So I do my best, but it can be difficult.
We'll take your word for it.
Okay.
We're already an hour late, so any brevity is appreciated.
All right, I'll stick to the point. A subtle backstory. So I had a dream of doing as much good as I could in this world. I got a master's degree in social work with the motivation to then become a police officer. I wanted to understand why people commit the crimes and get ahead of the issues and be the best police officer I could. I had a lot of dreams in the career. 8 months out of the police academy, I was called to a domestic where a husband was holding his wife hostage with multiple firearms. She was able to sneak away for a couple seconds, text her parents who called us, and we went there. When we got to the house, he was in fact holding her hostage with multiple firearms. We put ourselves, my sergeant and I, in Ware, New Hampshire. It's a only 12 officer department. It was just us on. We put ourselves in between the husband and the wife. When we did that, he shot 6 times at us, and 2 hit me in my dominant arm. We were able to save her, but my life was then on the line. An artery was severed, and I was bleeding out quickly. Luckily, we had a tourniquet that was put on me, and I got rushed to the hospital, and my life was saved. When I woke up, I was told by the surgeon that I had permanent nerve damage, and I would likely never be able to use my dominant hand again. I spent the next 3 years undergoing 5 surgeries, trying to learn how to live life left-handed. I only had one hand, and I lost my full independence. I needed help eating, shaving, showering, everything. I still can't really write to this day. So I moved to New Hampshire to become a police officer. I was such an independent person, and now I rely on so many people for everything. I had a dream to return, but it was determined it was too unsafe for me to do so. The hardest part of it all was after I retired, October 2021, I was told what my benefits would be. At the time, I was making $21.50 an hour. I found out my benefit is 66% of that. So my total pension is $29,000 per year. On top of that, I have to pay my own health insurance. And in fact, I went in front of the town of Ware right after I retired and I asked for aid in health insurance. They said they'll pay half of it for a year and then I'm on my own. I returned a year later and I said, I can't afford this. Can you please help me at least until we figure out the end result of this bill? They said, no, you're too expensive. So a large portion of my benefit is taken from the health insurance, and I'm single, I'm unmarried, I can't rely on anybody else to help me with this health insurance. And then for the difficulty, I'm capped on my earnings. We're only allowed to fill in that last 33% of the 66 we make. So I'm only allowed $20,000 per year. I don't know what I'm capable of yet. I can't write. I could barely button these shirts today, but I would like to eventually find out what I am capable of with the limitations on this cap. What can I do making $20,000 per year? It's almost like count myself out because there's any job would make more than that. And when I start to, then they'll start taking my pension. Any motivation is just completely lost by that number. I'm having difficulties surviving based on that 29,000. I get support from my family. I found a roommate to help me pay bills, but I wasn't working in a big city. I was pretty much on my own since the incident happened. And it seems like every time I ask for help, I'm just told I'm too expensive and I'm thrown away. I don't even hear from the town anymore. And fortunately, I found the people behind me to help me fight through my battles. Dan and I, the only two officers in New Hampshire that have survived a shooting and medically retired, we've been there for each other. And he's been my number one support. And if there were any others, I'm sure that we would have found them. We're a small community here, but it's just been us two. And I really just, beyond anything else, am hopeful that you all will consider helping us. It's a very small number of people that will be helped, and we desperately need it. We've had a lot of setbacks, both of us, every time we get our foot in the door. We have a setback and we need an additional surgery, and it's just been nonstop. So I'm hopeful that you give us the opportunity to strive.
Well, thank you for your testimony, and again, congratulations on surviving your ordeal as well as you have.
Thank you so
Very
much.
Are there any questions? Don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Carl Farrington?
I'm sorry, I forgot to give my written testimony. Can I?
We'll pass it along. Thank you.
You turned it off.
Red is on. I'm Carl Farrington with the, currently still with the Lawrence Police Department down in Massachusetts. Derry, New Hampshire resident for about 25 years now. I was born and raised in Lawrence, followed a career in law enforcement from my family, grandfather, great uncle. My great grandfather was a fireman and also served as the the fire chief. I started my career up in Raymond, New Hampshire back in the late 90s, just after the Claremont shooting of troopers and officers up there. Still wanted to get in the job. Also, the Epsom officer, just after that, I still wanted to get into the job. I started up in New Hampshire. I worked there a few years and decided to go back to my hometown down in Lawrence and worked hard. I can't tell you how many times I was injured, how many times I was violently attacked, stuck with needles, hit with bats, hit with pipes, hit with fists, hit with rocks, hit with cars, over and over again over the years. Did I take much time out? No. I was a hard worker. You know, officers have that personality where you just want to go help people. And that's who I was. I started up here wanting to help what I could, OUIs or DWIs, I think you call them up here, and just trying to get people off the road, you know, help save lives. and I couldn't tell you how many lives I saved.
Not to cut you short, but could you give us some information on why you're in favor of the bill?
In 2020, we're tracking a crew of armed robbers just going around the city, random attack people. We have cameras throughout the city. I was trying to track it down on the cameras, trying to see vehicles, whatever we could find out. So even if you weren't involved, they didn't hit your sector of town. All the officers were involved. Then I responded to they call it B&E, breaking and entry, which later was found out it was attempted home invasion. 3 men ran into the apartment with guns blazing. Fortunately, there was nobody home. Another officer arrived and his partner, Bricky, just out of the academy. First day, they arrived moments before me. They're confronting 3 suspects getting into a car. I pull in the parking lot. I see something going on. I stop at the gate. As I'm getting out of the cruiser, that vehicle flees from those officers. And as it flees, it does a little button hook around my cruiser to head for the gate, which the cruiser was in front of. And obviously me at that point, I had just exited the cruiser. I got slammed up against the cruiser by his vehicle as he attempted to flee the crimes they were committing. My left ankle was probably 75, 80% ripped off. I got pushed through the vehicle and thrown, they estimated like 15 feet. It's all caught on video. And then the suspect ran me over. My knees totally out of line. Like I said, the ankle, I've had numerous surgeries over and over again. Attempt to save it, hopefully I'll have movement. You know, I can't feel a majority of my foot. I can't move it. But on the inside, I feel it constantly. Constant headache, constant pain. I'm still in need of 2 total knee replacements. I haven't done that yet because of financial difficulties. Right away, you know, I'm out injured. I'm just trying to walk again. Didn't walk for a year and a half. A lot of the guys didn't touch on the family impact, and I'll just say that. My family was devastated. I'm the lone worker within that household. You know, my wife wanted to be a good mother and be home with the kids, and I had the opportunity to work overtime and help raise a family, and that's what we're doing. So then we're all of a sudden thrown into me making, you know, minimum amount of money and trying to raise a family. Sure, our friends held fundraisers for us. It helped tremendously, but the college fund starts disappearing. All the fundraisers quickly disappear. You know, and then fighting with the insurance companies. You know, I was getting bills for major surgeries. It's like, didn't you guys know this was part of my injury? And it's just this constant battle, and then just trying to buy things to survive with. Learning how to sit on the toilet. You're building up your bathroom with all the, you know, the handicap abilities. I can't tell you how many times I was on the floor crying my butt off in front of my wife and kids. So my kids have been affected because of the injury. Just watching me, a guy that was always a hard charger, wanting to play with the kids. When I was out of work, I was with my family. And then they saw me sitting on a recliner for a year and a half trying to recover. Then when I started walking again, sure, the pain sets in even more. So I'm sure I wasn't too pleasant at that point. And then the aggravation of knowing that I'm not that hard charger I was. I wasn't saving lives. I wasn't trying to, you know, be a good man, be a good father, be a good husband. You know, and the devastation that put on me and my family was crazy. And so right now we're still fighting down in Massachusetts for bills similar to this to pass. You know, and these guys talked about the ability to work. I wanted to take courses. You know, I know I can't go back to the job, but I wanted to take courses. My whole life was dedicated to police work. So I wanted to take a course to learn how to do something. And if I become good at it, then you're going to limit me on what I can make, which it doesn't seem right. It seems like you want to provide as much as you can for your family. I wasn't able to help my girls with vehicles when they were growing up. All of a sudden, they had to start working. My wife had to start working. You know, everything just disappeared, money. And, you know, now it's prom season. My daughter's asking, not a lot, she's just looking for flowers. I can't even get her flowers at this point. It's quite the burden. I'm here to support it. I intend to talk. I'm sorry if I'm rambling. I hope you guys just think about the impact that it has on both family and friends. I have guys at work that PTSD just watched me on the ground. I got knocked out. I had brain damage. So they thought I was dead. You know, they see my legs flailed apart, my ankle ripped off. Poor kid, first night on the job. That could have been him. Where would he be right now? And, you know, his ability to earn money and how much would he be making on retirement? But you get a guy like me who'd been on for 25 years and I'm still fighting every day. And just the block that I walked to get here today, you know, the pain is intense. The mind starts going numb. The vision gets blurry because of the pain. Do I take medications the rest of my life and just be a, you know, a burden to that? I don't want to be. I want to be a productive member of society, and I hope you guys pass this bill. Any questions?
Representative Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question, although at the risk of Madam Chair's ire, I just want to make a comment. Thank you very much for your testimony. I'm very aware, this committee is very aware of the effects of PTSD on those in your situation. So regardless of what this committee does with this bill, you're all very valued, and we appreciate your service. And we wish that this system wasn't so broken for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Oliveira.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mario Oliveira. I'm a retired police detective from the city of Somerville, Massachusetts. I was shot in the line of duty on November 2nd, 2010. I was shot 6 times, died 3 times in the hospital that evening, and by the grace of God, was brought back. I was married at the time with a 3-year-old boy, and later learned when I got home from the hospital that my wife was pregnant. I ended up having another child 9 months later. So I was left with sitting at home making 72% of my pay, a little bit more than half, to try to sustain a life for a young family. I'd like to educate you a little bit on what an officer would get if they died in the line of duty. In this case, we're in New Hampshire. Officer Doherty and Officer Lewis. Had they died the evening that they were shot, their spouses would have received a one-time federal payment of $437,503, tax-free from the federal government. The state of New Hampshire gives a $100,000 tax-free payout. It's different in Mass. It's $300,000 in Mass. Their spouses or beneficiary would receive 100% of their base salary at the rank that they held at the time of their death. Okay? Their children, if they had children, would receive in-state college tuition for free. 4 years. However, because they were brave enough to survive, they both received 66 2/3%, half of their pay. So what's the message that this state is sending to your officers? You're worth more dead than you are alive. I know it's not any of your fault. Like, ma'am, what you said, it's a broken system, but you have an opportunity to fix it. Okay? It's horrific. It's sad that an officer has to be punished, financially speaking, for surviving an ordeal. It shouldn't be like this. This is America, the greatest country on earth. We are better than this. We need to fix it.
Thank you. Thank you. And
It's
again,
my hope-
congratulations
thank you.
on
It's
surviving.
my hope that this committee votes favorably on this bill and passes it. Thank you for your time.
Representative Schmidt has a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Oliveira, I'm asking you the questions because it seems like just possible that you're not in as much pain right at the moment as some of the previous witnesses have been. I was part of this committee when we passed the bill that gave the $100,000 death benefit to police officers and firefighters. Okay. But I'm astonished to hear that the insurance coverage is as minimal as it is in terms of even covering the bills that you all have had. I'm wondering whether I ask you just as a technical question: have any of you been counseled, and maybe you know because you seem to be quite knowledgeable? Have any of you been counseled to sue the state or the department involved for the damage that was inflicted on you, obviously against your will, with no intent on your part, by somebody who was in the act of committing a crime, for which they probably have been sentenced to a long time in prison. So can you tell me whether you've ever been advised to sue the state or the department because great harm has been done to you and your colleagues that have spoken before you?
Certainly. I'll try to answer your question, sir.
Thank you.
So the laws are obviously different in Mass than they are in New Hampshire. In Massachusetts, we have individual retirement systems. And in the city of Somerville, we got our own separate retirement system. The retirement system pays my base salary, 100% of my base salary. I pay my insurance through, it's deducted through the 100% income that I make on a monthly basis. As far as filing lawsuit against the subject who shot me, he's dead. I can't sue anybody. So every situation is different. Could we potentially? Possibly, but it draws out the process. These folks are traumatized enough as it is going through what they've gone through, as have I. What we want is to remedy, have an equitable, fair process that we can retire with dignity and move on with our lives. And to echo what my brothers in blue have said earlier, we just want to be productive members of society and be treated fairly and be able to earn and take care of our families. What do we do to deserve this other than put on our uniforms and our badge and have the courage to go out on the street and take care of criminals and make lives easier for you fine folks and your families that you love dearly? That's what we're guilty of, doing our jobs. And I'll tell you, I'll close with this. Police officers are the guardians of our communities. Without them, we have chaos and anarchy. We owe it to them to take care of them when they need us. Just like you deserve to be taken care of by us when you need us. So again, I ask for your support and hopefully pass this bill. Thank you so
very
much for your
much.
time. Any questions? Thank you.
No. Anyone else wish to testify on Senate Bill 134? Mr. Doherty?
Really quickly. To answer your question specifically, I did approach the city of Manchester regarding your question, and I was told that we can't set precedent, and that was the end of that. And as far as any type of lawsuit, it just wasn't considered. We were more insulted by the response than anything, and we just let it go. But with respect to this most recent amendment, prior to, I'm very well invested in law enforcement and in the fire world in the state of New Hampshire. And any major incident where someone got seriously injured that would qualify for accidental disability, I assure you I would know about it. And I do know of incidents. However, Paul Lewis and I are the only two current accidental disability benefit recipients currently that would qualify for what's in front of you. Now, since the amendment, I'm not exactly sure what that has changed, but prior to this amendment, Paul Lewis and I are the only two that currently receive this. So as far as the financial impact, in my opinion, it's grossly overestimated, considering that in our estimates that it would be about $200,000 a year, approximately. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 134. All right, so starting with Senate Bill 134, I call Senator Birdsell.